Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Inertia Gaming here, and welcome to my next Elden Ring video. This is about a Lord of Blood build that I've created that I think some people will really like because it's very, very good for kind of cheesing your way through the game if you're struggling, which I was a little bit, and using blood, it's just super strong because when you hit a blood proc, it's just insta-kill. And dual-wielding katanas in this way is just so good. Okay, so let's go over the main premise of the build. You're going to be using two katanas. Now, the optimal route would be to use two uchi katanas, which there are only two ways of getting two at the same time. You either start as a samurai, which starts with one, and then you go pick one up in the world and you have two, or you get a friend to drop you one in the game if they don't want it or they don't need it. I don't have friends, and I didn't start as a samurai, so sadly, I don't get to have two uchi katanas. The Nagakiba, though, is a pretty damn good replacement. I actually prefer having a Nagakiba as I like the range it offers compared to the Uchikatana, which does not have as much range. So, how are you going to use this build? Well, it is a hybrid build, so it's not just fully focused on bleed. It is spells like dragon spells as well as bleed. But here's the combo. You're going to two-hand the Uchikatana, or whichever item you're using in your left hand. You're going to use seppuku, which is the weapon art you're going to put on both of your weapons. You're going to coat the weapon in blood. It's going to get blood loss. You're going to lose a little bit of health, but it's actually not that big of a deal. It's not that much health if you have 35 to 40 vigor, or even 30 vigor. So, now both of your weapons are coated in blood. This will last for about a minute, I would say. Long enough for you to do some serious damage to a lot of the endgame bosses. But just showing it on some of these smaller ads, two-shot kill. Two-shot kill. Two-shot with just one katana. This will be a three-shot kill, but that's because this guy has significantly more health. This combo is broken. You do so much damage. Okay, let's go over the gear used to achieve this. The armor I'm wearing is the Knight's Cavalry armor. How you get this is you have to go up into the Consecrated Snowfield. It's a very late game area. Just right around here, you set the time to night over at the Site of Grace, and over here there will be a caravan of enemies. There are two like tree sentinel type of enemies, but they will be wearing black and they're both on horses. I recommend drawing one out, killing him, and then drawing the next out and killing him. It's basically two boss fights in a row if you're able to kill both of them in one turn. So if you kill the first guy and the second guy kills you, you have to fight them both all over again. But once you kill both of them, it will give you this armor. I think it looks really good. Well, all of it except the helmet. I think the helmet looks kind of stupid, but that's just personal opinion. Then there are three talismans, or actually there's really one talisman in this build that is super important, and that is the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. So anytime you proc bleed with your katanas, you will get a buff in the top left hand corner of your screen. It's also worth noting that this can proc with your spells as well, but you need to be close enough to the enemy for it to apply. The other three talismans you're going to be running are totally up to you. The Phlox Canvas Talisman, notice this one says Faithful. It is because I do not have the Phlox Canvas Talisman. I have the worse version. If you can get the Phlox Canvas Talisman from doing Millicent's quest, you definitely should. I screwed up her quest, so I only have the Faithful version, but that will greatly boost the potency of your incantations. The other two I run are Erdtree's Favor and Blessed Dew Talisman. These are totally up to you. I use the Blessed Dew because when I do seppuku, that little bit of health you lose, you'll start regenning it right away instead of having to drink a flask. And then Erdtree's Favor is just a general buff. You could definitely run a Radagon's Sore Seal, Marika's Scar Seal, the Heirlooms, anything that you think would just improve your general gameplay, you just can put on in that slot. And lastly, this is a hybrid build. This is the Arcane Faith version of the build. You could dump all of your points into Dexterity and then do Arcane as well, and that would make it so your katanas do the most damage while also buffing your bleed procs. I prefer to have a hybrid where I can use spells because some bosses are immune to bleed, and that should definitely be noted. This bleed strategy is amazing, but sometimes you will just run into a wall of a boss that is like, hey, buddy, the bleed ain't gonna work on me, so you should have a backup plan. Your backup plan will be your spells. The first spell I'd like to talk about is Ezeki's Decay. This, in my opinion, is one of the best spells in the game. You run up to the boss you're fighting. You hold down L1. One puff, two puffs. The boss now has rot on him. that will do around 10k damage alone. So while you're running around with your 2 katanas, smacking it and doing bleed procs, it is also taking damage over time. Those 2 combined will lead to you doing so much damage. The second spell I'd like to talk about is Theodrix's Magma. You just puff it once, it hits. You can do it 2 times in a row. It leaves this magma on the ground that does damage over time, as you can see from that poor guy. Over 1,000 DOT. Actually, it did 12k and killed him. That spell is extremely strong, definitely worth using. The Flame of Frenzy is another spell. It's just a good one to have in your back pocket because it's quite cheap. You can charge it. It does AoE, and damn, does it do some damage. I love this spell. When enemies rushing me, just quickly toss it out. Bang. It's going to hit everything in front of me. It's going to hit them and anything around them. It's a super good spell. Next, going more with your blood theme, you have the Swarm of Flies. This is a super cheap spell that you can kind of just spam at your enemies. It will interrupt them, and each one that you land will do a blood proc. So even though this guy is holding up his shield, it does not matter. That's how strong bleed is in this game. Okay, the second to last spell we have to go over is Placidusax's Ruin. It's another dragon spell, but doesn't scale with Arcane, so it kind of doesn't fit the build. Either way, it looks super cool, so we're using it. Just be forewarned, this spell kind of has a tendency to whiff, and is easily interruptible. If a target runs up to you and smacks you, you will just totally stop doing it altogether. So, you run up, you press L1, giant burst of lightning, and a huge dragon overhead. You shoot this awesome laser beam, and that is exactly what I was talking about. You will get hit directly out of it. So, if I can get some space here. Well, this is why it's a hybrid build, so you can do both. So, you get some space, L1. And that is the entire animation. Okay, the second to last spell we have to go over is Blood Boon. You get it from beating Mog, so either you're pretty good at the game if you have this spell, or you can jump on some pillars, if you guys know what I mean. So, the spell, you press L1, you reach up into the air, and you throw some Blood Flame. It lingers on the ground and will do bleed procs, which is really nice. I personally don't love this spell, and I definitely like Swarm of Flies better, just because of the long startup frames this has. A lot of the times an enemy will just come up and hit you in the face while you're trying to cast it. But if you have like a large enemy that's just sitting still, you could definitely cast this directly on them, and then they will just take damage over time and bleed over and over again, and it's pretty good. Okay, the last thing we need to do is go over some alternative weapons. The Rivers of Blood, it was just recently buffed in the recent patch, or rather it was fixed as it wasn't scaling correctly. Mine is level 0, but it's worth showing off simply for the badass weapon art. It procs bleed like crazy and looks super cool doing it. Don't let anyone tell you this weapon isn't good, it was just fixed and it is awesome. Another option is Eleonora's Pole Blade. You are basically Darth Maul with this weapon, and it is badass. The R1 swings make you look like Darth Maul, and the weapon art is super cool as well. It's very good. The only problem with it is it has quite a few startup frames, so it's definitely slower than the Rivers of Blood, even if you do cover more range, and that leap you do at the beginning does have a tendency to sometimes whiff on enemies, sometimes you'll just completely miss them, even if you're like diving right towards them. Okay guys, that is the build. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and thank you guys so much for all the love on the previous video. If you guys could like and subscribe, that would really help me out as I'm trying to grow my channel around Elden Ring. This game is so cool. I'm sure you guys all know, but this game is awesome, and I cannot wait to get it in New Game Plus and to make even more content. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.